we're gonna talk for the next 30 minutes or so, give you really an overview of AutoGen. Raise your hand if you're familiar with it, just curious. Okay, not many, all right. And I definitely want to get a pulse of the room in terms of your sort of kind of your area of expertise. So raise your hand if you're a dying data scientist. Nobody's doing Gen AI then, I guess, because everyone in data science is now doing Gen AI. No, just kidding. Who is building AI applications? All right, a few of you. Who is just doing, I guess, general AI work? All right. Okay, well, welcome. So again, happy to be here. So let's, a long time ago in a galaxy not far away, our first wave of generative AI applications is, the venerable RAG pattern, Retrieval Augmented Generation. I work with, in Microsoft, I'm a cloud solutions architect. I work with customers. Right now, we're doing obviously a lot of work in generative AI. Customers are just really adopting RAG patterns first, and I think where we're going next is definitely on the agentic. I'm not sure if it's a short A or a long A, but that's where we're going. But anyway, historically, not that long ago, kind of an AI app looked like this. You had the search side of it. You had your data store, your vectorized data store. You had the LLM. You searched. You sent that to the LLM. You asked a question, and you sort of got get chatbot kind of response. Definitely agents are not new, right? But one thing I can definitely say is it's really hard to decouple AI, or at least what we traditionally consider AI, the LLM piece and stuff like that, from application and or software development. Because at the end of the day, they do go hand in hand. Because the LLMs, they're very powerful, they can do very many things, but they still need, you to tell them what you want them to do, and they're still they're a cog in a machine, right? And typically this machine are some different kinds of applications. So again, the agents is sort of the next wave, that's evolution. I read somewhere that, I don't remember where, that said this is sort of the next iteration of software development as a whole. I don't know, I'm not a developer myself, but I can see a little bit of that, right? The difference is there's a lot more complexity. At the end of the day, it's really about building applications. It's about complexity. It's about orchestration. It's about grounding. It's about all of these different things in the middle. So, what is an agent, right? If you come to think about it, an agent is really nothing more than a standalone piece of code, or it's another cog in a machine, right? It's a specialized, typically it should be just a very specialized type of thing. It's a specialized piece of code that performs an action, and again, and that's what the term agent is. And in terms of architectures, there's definitely been a lot of research, and there's been a lot of papers in this agentic space, but sometimes it's single agent, and people are sort of moving into this multi-agent type of workflow. And on the left-hand side over here, you kind of have you might have something simple, perhaps like a RAG, and the LLM, you don't necessarily have to give a lot of LLM control, but when you need to do a lot more control and things are a little bit more complicated, they fall on the right-hand side over here. Agents are becoming first-class citizen, right? And basically, like I said, it's just a piece of code that does something. And an agent doesn't have to interact with an LLM. An agent can just be a piece of code that, opens a file, reads a file, or generates data, or something like that. And that's where, that's where things are definitely going, right? It's this idea that we're building intelligent, I'm using it with quotes, right? Applications, but not all of it is LLM. LLMs do a lot, but not everything that you do in an application needs an LLM, right? So these ideas sort of came up and that sort of thing. So again, agents, this is where we're going. And the other part of this is that the needs keep evolving, right? It's like RAG is very powerful. And obviously, I've been helping many customers implement RAG solutions with their own data, which is typically what customers do, right? Because models, models only know so much, and you have to ground those models, and you want folks are asking questions about their own set of documents. But it's really hard when you have to do something that's more complex. It's really hard to use this RAG pattern approach. I mean, you may have an orchestrator which could do some things, but it's really hard to implement really complex workflows. And sometimes the AI application is not a chatbot, or it's not a chat room style, right? I need to run a large number of agents is sort of another type of thing. And this is all customer feedback that the team that built AutoGen has gotten from many things. And just to give you a little bit of background, yes, as Sean said, so AutoGen was actually created by Microsoft Research. And Microsoft Research is Microsoft's R&D arm, and it is an open source tool. It's one of our many sets of tools for helping build AI applications. So again, my agent needs to remember things over time, stay focused on his tasks, so things like memory come into play. Again, when you're running multiple agents, you need distributed system resiliency. And again, and you can see how this is really, I mean, yes, it's part of the AI umbrella, but this is really like operational, if you think about it, where your AI piece, like your LLM, is a piece of this whole thing, of this whole mechanism. So again, here's some examples of things that perhaps are a little bit more complex. So triage a bug filed in a code repository. So yeah, when you ask someone to do this kind of task, like the person, right, we orchestrate in our head what are the tasks that we need to do, assuming you're organized or don't have ADD. But you kind of do step one, step two, you take what you do in step one, you use it as input for step two. It can be manual, it could be automated, but again, there's a lot here. So again, the punchline sort of is like building intelligent apps is hard. I don't know, I'm just kind of curious for those that are actually doing this sort of thing. Yes? No? Agree? Thumbs up if you agree? Okay. Why? I'm curious.
Because it's ever evolving.
Okay.
So, I mean, you build something today, like I'll build something and a new model will come out, or the interface changes, or somebody has a new way, MCP comes out, it goes in that direction, it changes.
Yeah.
I've had stuff like built and go to get dependencies, and those dependencies are out of date, and then,
Okay.
So it's ever evolving.
Thank you. So yeah, MCP, the buzzword of the day, right? I'm not talking about MCP, so don't worry. Oh, thank you. But yeah, for the LLM itself, the LLM piece or the LLM SOPs piece, right? Obviously, you need to ground the LLM. You need to be specific about the instructions you give it. You have to do prompt engineering. That's not going to change. But again, sort of thinking back as to the traditional workflow, if you've been doing RAG-type applications, RAG is great, but it doesn't, it's not extendable. You can extend this only so much, but it really is not extendable. So it's not that flexible for really meeting the needs of where folks, developers, customers, kind of just the AI community in general. And this is a quote, I don't know where this came from, but it says, like, just as microservices and 12-factor became important patterns for building cloud-native apps and scalable mobile backends, a decade ago, we see that agent systems patterns emerging as the key enabler for a sophisticated intelligent app. So again, AutoGen was created by Microsoft Research, and sort of that's the focus of the talk today. There's a little bit more about agents specifically. Again, agents should operate independently. They should respond to events or inputs. And really at the end, a lot of, I think most tools today, like agentic tooling, right, sort of make this assumption, or it's really, an agent is, like I said, it's just really a piece of self-contained code, most typically, that is an abstraction, a developer abstraction for using models in combination with events, with data, with code, with memory, runtime, operations, computing. You get the picture. A little bit about agentic patterns, right? These are just sort of generic types of patterns that you might see regardless of the framework that you're using. So again, conversation agent, chatbot type of thing, but here you're speaking to maybe two agents at the time. You have multi-agent conversations over here on the right-hand side. There's different kinds of, these are high-level abstractions. All of these are really hard to implement, or at least they were, we hope. And oh, here's some other examples of different kinds of task-based multi-agent examples, right? So again, you can see here, there's a theme, right? There's an agent, or whether there's a green or an assistant or a grounding agent, right? But these are all typically independent pieces, wheels in a machine or cogs in a machine that are communicating with one another. So there are definitely a few agentic AI frameworks out there. We have a couple. Other companies, other organizations have a couple. So really, the focus of today, I just wanted to show you, right? Some of on the left-hand side, these are some of Microsoft's agentic or AI type frameworks. Most popular ones being obviously AutoGen and semantic kernel. You may have heard of semantic kernel as well. If you haven't, I'm going to touch on semantic kernel towards the end. And then on the right-hand side, there's others, right? But again, nothing particularly new. What is newer probably is, first of all, is AutoGen, as Sean said, was created by Microsoft Research, and it was published. It was created. It was launched, I think, in September 23, so about 18 months ago. Came out of MSR. And there's this paper, right? AutoGen enabling next-gen LLM applications via multi-agent conversation. Microsoft, we were actually talking about this before agentic or multi-agentic workflows were popular, right? And the idea was like they were forward-looking, and they're saying, what's the future of AI applications going to look like? How do you really empower developers, right? The keyword here is developers to build them. So AutoGen launched in September 23. And the main idea of AutoGen is just really, again, agents, right? Agents and orchestrators. Like I said before, an agent is just a specialized task-based piece of code, piece of software that does something. And an orchestrator can also be an agent. But what ends up happening is you sort of need this back and forth between, you need someone to control the flow. So that's where the term orchestrator comes in. So in the first versions of, I don't know if this code is the new, I think this, I'm pretty certain this is the most recent, which is 0.4, which is what I'm going to focus on today. But at the end of the day, you have, this probably should make a lot of sense, because here we have a group chat, right? So this is my application, and the group chat, you have a coder agent, you have a file surfer agent, you have a web surfer agent, and you have some sort of code execution, right? And all of these together are performing a bigger task. And this is what it hopefully should look like. It should be easy to do something like this, and it actually is right now with AutoGen. So AutoGen, again, I think it's if it's not the largest, it's one of the largest open source tools published by Microsoft. But not only that, it was really developed by the community. So, I mean, yes, a lot of Microsoft folks contributed to this, but also a lot of customers, a lot of startups, a lot of researchers. So, I'm not sure. Yeah, these are recent statistics. So 42,000 stars in GitHub, 483 contributors across multiple organizations. Very, very, very active development. So, and that's really the main thing here. It was really built for developers, right? So to really enable you to accelerate your AI applications. Here's a little bit of the timeline. So again, October 23. And then essentially what happened was at version 0.2, the feedback that was coming in was people were having a hard time using AutoGen. It wasn't necessarily very straightforward. It wasn't really flexible, et cetera, et cetera. So then the team went back and refactored AutoGen over last summer, and then published the version 0.4. And 0.5 was released about a week or two ago. So they refactored this, and they really took into account all of these different things that were not happening before, things that are really going to enable developers, and also, from a UI perspective, like what's sort of best practices here. And the model really is this, right? It really shifted from it wasn't an event-driven workflow, but it shifted to that. And the reason that it did that is because customers, enterprise organization, or large orgs, small orgs, whoever's actually using AI to build AI applications are trying to mimic a workflow, right? It's not an application. You're mimicking a workflow. Like, resource one is doing task one. Resource number two is doing this. Resource number three, and there's a path. So rather than it being the previous architecture, it moved into this event-based workflow. So the idea that you build agents based on events. And the other part here that they took into consideration was the developer experience. So the developer experience was not great before that, and obviously we've got our awesome meme over here. So not only are you getting the best in terms of orchestration and all of the great things I'll talk about in a second, but you're also getting a good developer experience, and you're also getting a good user experience. And it's still early on, right? It's still actively contributed. It's just going to get better. And as you can see, right, it's really a community-driven a tool. So the current architecture. So from here on now, I'm really going to focus on the current version. If you've used AutoGen before 0.4, I would strongly encourage you to try it again. It has changed a lot, and you're gonna see the difference. So, again, the main architecture is it's a layered architecture. So at the bottom, you've got sort of the core API. This is a very low-level API that handles a lot of different things, which I'll talk about in a second. The next level of abstraction is what's called the Agent Chat API. So the Agent Chat API is a higher-level API, which is built on the core API. And the Agent Chat API really gives you the ability to control, so the bottom layer is really about, think like infrastructure, memory, like a lot of more low-level things, more finer-level control. Agent Chat gives you basically the idea to specify a multi-agent application or workflow very, very easily. And then there are extensions, right? So we have some extensions, and it's very extensible. And I believe there's a list of extensions that you can add to this. That's actually the core framework itself. On the top side, there's the application layer. So you can build your application on top of, obviously on top of AutoGen. Now AutoGen, again, just to clarify, AutoGen is not a large language model. AutoGen is a framework for building multi-agent applications. We also published this application called Magentic 1, which it gives you the ability out of the box to do a lot of different kinds of tasks, like file control, web browsing. So there's already like some built-in things that you can that will help you get started. And obviously you can extend this to your needs. And then on the left-hand side, there are the developer tools. So we've got the Studio, which is the low-code, no-code approach to using AutoGen. And then I don't remember what the bench is, so apologies for that. And I'll talk about that. So when you think about this, right, so the Agent Chat. Agent Chat gives you pre-built workflows out of the box. And here are 3 different examples of tasks and different types of things that you might do. So the first one on the left is called a round-robin group chat. And what that is if you have a series of agents, basically it loops through all of the agents, and there's typically some sort of output. Now, if you need some sort of like human-in-the-loop type of scenario, right, or these are well designed for sort of simple tasks, you could still do complex things, but think more. But again, if you have, let's say, 3 agents, it's agent 1, agent 2, agent 3. Start again, agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, and rinse and repeat. The other 2 on the right-hand side, and you can do all of this if you can sort of see. I don't think you can read this, but like down here, you specify the agent. Okay, here's assistant agent, the kind, the model. There's some setup stuff that you would have to do. Again, this is just a code snippet example. But then down here, the team, right, the multi-agent team, which is really what you care about, is this round-robin group chat. And you do agent writer, agent reviewer. You can specify a termination condition, right, whether it's over a set number of loops or when it reaches some sort of, like any sort of loop that you would program. On the right-hand side, these are different kinds of experiences. So this is what's called, on the middle, it's called selector group chat. So it's a central routing. What that means is there is actually an orchestrator that determines what the next step is going to be, right? So, the agent does something, there's a response, it goes back to this maybe centralized orchestrator, and then the orchestrator says, okay, based on what you told me and based on what I know that the next task needs to be, it sort of routes it to somewhere else. But here the runtime is actually centralized. And then the last one is called swarm with local routing. And all that means is that every agent decides locally where they're going to route the next call to. But as you can see, right, you basically specify, you specify the models, and we have built-in connectivity to all kinds of models, right? And you can specify those in your setup file. So whatever the LLM you're going to use, you create your client, and then you define the web agent over here, and then the code agent, but then the team here. This is round robin, that's selector group chat, and that is swarm. And again, you just specify the class, the agents that you're going to be using, and if there's any sort of termination condition. A lot of these are actually may not have a termination condition. They're like fully automated. Okay, but again, the whole idea here is that you have the scaffolding to be able to do this very, very easily. And agent chat, again, this is all related to agent chat. It just really gives you the best practices in human agent interaction, right? Like how there's a lot of tooling out of the box. Can you extend them? Yes, you can. Can you do custom stuff? Absolutely. But the idea was to provide you with a great set of tools, right, to easily build and iterate and then sort of refine later. Get that MVP up and running in a fairly quick manner. Because doing all the stuff, like all the underlying stuff can actually be really difficult. So these are some of the, again, these are the features or sort of the high-level features that the Agent Chat API gives you. So it gives you conversational agents like Copilots and ChatGPTs. So actually, if you've ever used one of our Copilots, for example, that is actually an agent workflow. You don't see it, but if you ask a question, right, you sometimes see it's like retrieving data, searching the web, opening a file. Like there's actually a bunch of agents under the hood that you're not seeing that are actually performing all these tasks. All you see is the input and the output. So yeah, if you want to autonomous agents with human oversight. Gives you memory, learning, context management. If the context gets too big, it can summarize it and then pass that on to as a context for the next LLM call. And model-driven development. So this is all enabled for you by the Agent Chat API. When we go a step lower on the core level, this is really about the event-driven workflows. And again, you have the scaffolding to build all sorts of different kinds of workflows. So here's just a couple of examples. On the left-hand side, if you have a concurrent workflow, so again, agent 1, and then you sort of parallel path multiple concurrent agents, and then agent 3. The one in the middle is just a sequential one. The one on the right is what's called a multi-agent debate. So kind of all agents talking to all other agents. And this is all specified. You specify this at the core level. So when agents run, right, again, they can run with a shared runtime. Sort of this is, think of this as like multiple agents running on, like on a standalone environment, maybe running on the edge or on a single machine. Or on the right-hand side, you can also do distributed. So you've got the runtime in the middle, and then you've got all of these different agents that are just, so like on the right-hand side is definitely in the distributed systems realm. The one on the left is just maybe single machine or single application type of thing. One cool thing about this is that it also gives you the ability to, so the agents are lazily spawned. What does that mean? The actual agent won't start running until it gets the first message. So the idea of it, when you use agents, the idea here is that you have all these different pieces of software. They're talking to one another, and they're passing messages. That's also really important in terms of security and sort of enterprise settings because agent A cannot change the state of agent B. All it does is it could just send a message, and agent B will react to that message somehow. So if you think about distributed systems, security, enterprise, all these sorts of things, you can do all of this also with AutoGen. But again, the ability to sort of lazily spawn things, it just means that for example, in a case where you have to, if you're going to have multiple, like, I don't know, thousands of agents doing something, you don't have to pre-create those and have those up and running. They'll be created on demand when they're going to do a task, and then they'll shut down. So it gives you also that flexibility. Helps with managing your resources, cost examples for scenario, cost maybe, and that kind of thing. It also gives you observability. So there's a built-in tool set that actually gives you the ability to see what's actually happening between the agents. You specify the agents. That's sort of easy. That's a few lines of code, kind of fairly easy. But then you can also see what's sort of happening under the hood, which will help you with debugging and also traceability, accountability, and all the enterprise great things that we all know we need to do. Okay, and then it also provides cross-language interoperability. So this is an example, sort of a reference example, where you've got multiple agents that are doing different things. But look, some of them are Python, some of them are .NET. This agent runtime is Orleans Dapper. Here we have TypeScript. So it also gives you that ability, because again, each piece of code is independent, right? And all you're really trying to do is just manage how all of these things work together to perform a bigger task. Here are some of the things that the core API enables you. So interoperable distributed agents, as I said, massively parallel workflows, enterprise agent platform, again, all of the security and traceability, accountability, governance that you need. And it's always going to have, right, so it's because MSR is probably the largest contributor, it's always going to have the latest and greatest in terms of, multi-research or multi-agent orchestration coming out of the research space. How are we doing on time? All right. Okay. Then there's this application. This is the studio. So again, this is just a screenshot. It's just a web app that runs, and then you can create, so rather than maybe coding it, you can actually create some of these things with a drag and drop tool, which is also built into AutoGen. Next slide. So Magentic 1, as I said before. So Magentic 1 was also, I'm not sure when it was released. It was not that long ago. But Magentic 1 is in and of itself, it's an application that you can run on top of, you can use AutoGen, and it gives you the ability to perform many sort of, kind of the tagline is, it can do almost anything. So this is an example, right, of an orchestrator and a task that's doing a whole bunch of things. So it's pulling a file, it's analyzing some Python code and extracting an image. It is going to the URL, then it's extracting the C++ code, it's analyzing the C++ code, and then it's executing the C++ code, right? You can see all of these different steps in this flow are I mean, yes, they're related, but they're each independent. You have an input from one, the output from one goes into the input of another. And that is enabled by Magentic 1. We have a solution accelerator. So we publish different kinds of solution accelerators on GitHub. These are repos where you can pretty much typically deploy them with the push of a button, which sets up some infrastructure for you and it sets up the infrastructure for you, and it allows you to do so many things. Like everything, right? You can extend this, but they're always great. It's called an accelerator for a reason. They're designed to meet, some sort of general use case, and then you tweak and you modify and you customize for your particular needs. So this one in particular is an HR onboarding accelerator, which is built with AutoGen, and it's basically this ability gives you. I know you can't read it, but it's just like it's an onboarding application for different kinds of departments and that sort of thing. We've seen AutoGen and multi-AI or multi-agent applications being used in all sorts of organizations and all sorts of functions. So it is actually quite flexible. Some of the high-level features, right, benefits of AutoGen. So the modularity, right, the ability to build custom agents, to connect them, to make them work together. Security, the scalability, right, then observability and debugging, as I showed you, and extensibility. So as you can see, you're really getting a really cool out-of-the-box solution, open source. And at the end of the day, right, so if you think about this, in the middle, that's your application. And you can use any sort of model that you want. You can use any sort of agent that you want. You can use any sort of code executors that you want. It's just very, very flexible. And then, so AutoGen is what I just talked about. There is another tool that we have, and I'm going to mention it today because they are not related, but they kind of are, which is semantic kernel. Semantic kernel is a tool. I don't know how old semantic kernel is, but it's older than AutoGen. It wasn't an agentic tool when it started. It was more, it was definitely built when in the RAG era. So it was really designed for being a RAG orchestrator. It's been extended. Semantic kernel also has agentic capabilities today. And again, as you can see over here, so AutoGen is pure Python. And it's a Python SDK, it's pure Python. Semantic kernel has a Python SDK, but it's really a C# application. And then it says here ideation and production, not necessarily because yes, it came out of MSR, it came out of research, AutoGen did, but it really is evolving into becoming a enterprise-ready tool and production-ready. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, and what you can do is you can take and you can use them. Actually, you can use them also side by side together. There is ultimately, I think, some of the capabilities that AutoGen has from the multi-agent perspective, they're all going to be essentially, they're all going to be working together sort of in the long term. It's going to be more of a unified approach to building AI solutions. But I mean, right now they are distinct tooling. They each have their own unique use cases, and I'm happy to talk about that later in office hours if you'd like. We have a whole series of blog posts, but this is the blog post that really sort of talks about the shared agent runtime, semantic kernel of AutoGen. And at the end of the day, this is for you, right? It's a tool built for developers, it's a tool built for users, and it's a tool built just to help, as our mission is, to empower every person and every organization in the world to, and I'm blanking on that, to do great things. I'll some of these links you can look at. It takes you to the GitHub repos and etc., social media. And thank you very much.